Welcome back, Guardians. Destiny 2's latest expansion, the Witch Queen, is just around the corner, and it centers on Savathûn. Savathûn has a long and complex history within the lore, so whether you are a returning player or a new player, you may need a bit of a reminder of who Savathûn is, what she's been up to, why she's trying to steal the light, and in Witch Queen we enter her throne world. What even is a throne world? So stick around and this video will get you up to speed. To truly understand Savathûn and her motives, we have to go back and have a look at the Hive origin story. And this comes from the Books of Sorrow. And the Books of Sorrow is a bit like a Hive history book from their perspective. And it talks about how the original Hive, and they're only referred to as the Proto-Hive, were trapped on a planet called the Fundament. And there were multiple factions of the Proto-Hive which fought with each other. And one of those factions was the Osmian throne. And that's where Savathûn comes from. She was the daughter of the Osmian king. Her brother was Oryx and her other sister was Xivu Arath. The Hive we know today are completely different from the Proto-Hive on the Fundament. The Proto-Hive are at the bottom of the food chain. They are preyed upon by other species of the Fundament, and the planet itself is quite hazardous towards them. On top of that, they also predicted that there was going to be a tidal wave, a god wave, a cataclysmic event that was going to wipe out trillions on the planet itself. And so they needed to get off planet before this event occurred. And the way that they did that is they made a bargain with the worm gods. The worm gods were also imprisoned on the Fundament. While they were extremely powerful in their own rights, they needed a host. They needed a symbiotic bond with another species to get off planet. And this is when the Hive make the bargain. So what was the bargain? The bargain was that the Hive would take the worm gods' worm larvae into their bodies, and this would form a symbiotic relationship. The worm larvae would grant them immense power and also immortality. And in exchange, the Hive would have to keep them alive and feed the worm. And the way that they fed the worm was through giving it tribute from killing. So this encouraged the Hive to go to war, to kill others, to feed their worm. What they didn't quite realize was that as their worm became more powerful and as their own power grew, its hunger would also grow. And so they needed to keep on killing. If they didn't feed their worm enough, the worm would consume them. So they ended up being stuck in this cycle. On top of that, the Hive royalty, Oryx, Savathûn, and Xivu Arath, also had another part of the bargain, and they had to continue to obey their natures forever. Oryx had to continue to navigate and explore. Savathûn had to obey her nature of cunning, and Xivu Arath must always test her strength, and that's why she's known as the God of War. And this is also why Savathûn is known as the sister of trickery and cunning, because it's in her nature, but it's also something that she needs to keep on doing as part of the original bargain, because if she disobeys her nature, it is said that her worm will also consume her. So now we can put all this information together to better understand why Savathûn wants to steal the light. Savathûn, at the time of writing this, is currently in a crystal form in the Dreaming City, and she is working with Marasov and her Techians to remove her worm. Marasov and the Techians have agreed to remove her worm because they understand if they remove her worm, she will lose her immortality and become mortal. She'll also lose her immense power. This will provide an opportunity to kill Savathûn. So the reason why Savathûn needs the light is she needs that power from the light to replace the worm. She needs something to be in its spot to continue to grant her power and immortality. Otherwise, she will be vulnerable to Marasov and Techians and anyone else trying to take her out. The scary thing about Savathûn stealing the light is that not only will she gain Guardian-like abilities, but also she will likely use the light to modify her throne world, or potentially create a new throne world using the light. For those who are not familiar with throne worlds, very powerful beings in the Destiny universe, mostly Hive, created throne worlds to protect them from death. When they would die, they would return to the throne world and be resurrected. So the only way that you could truly kill someone who had a throne world was to enter their throne world and take them out. What is likely going to make this very difficult for us is that the owners of throne worlds can make them whatever they want. They can craft them and mold them with their will and mind. And Savathûn is the sister of trickery and cunning. So we have to assume that her throne world is going to contain many, many lies. And this is likely why the theme for Witch Queen is Discover the Truth. A great example of how Savathûn has manipulated and molded her throne world is how we can see the swampy, dark jungle area. And in this area, there is a pyramid ship. And this is meant to represent Savathûn rejecting the darkness. And oppositely, Savathûn resides in a castle of light, and this is meant to represent the Hive aligning with the light. Without doubt, Savathûn is trying to impose her version of the truth on Guardians, and when we enter her throne world, we're going to need to play by her rules. So the big question is, how will Savathûn steal the light? While we don't quite know that exact process yet, we do know that she's been setting up the chessboard for her next big move. And primarily she did this as impersonating Osiris. During Season of the Hunt, Osiris lost his ghost, Sagira, and was lightless. At that point, Savathûn either possessed his body or took his form. There are differing opinions in the Destiny community. Some believe that Osiris is actually dead and she just possessed his body and used his shell. Others believe Osiris is still alive, which is what Savathûn actually tells us, that Osiris is alive and safe elsewhere, and she will return him to us once we remove the worm. Whilst impersonating Osiris, Savathûn did a number of things that were very sus. One of those things was she gathered dead ghost shells from the spider. Another was that she reclaimed the Crown of Sorrow from the ship the Glykon. The Crown of Sorrow was an original artifact created by her in order to possess anyone who wore it. She also implanted Savathûn's song in major characters within the tower, including Shaxx, Crow, Zavala, and it also spread throughout the city. She also befriended Crow and pushed him further away from his sister, Marasov. We don't know how all these chess pieces come together yet, but it's very likely this is part of her overall plan to steal the light. And there you have it. Use this lore knowledge to go forth and fight Savathûn and her lies. If you're interested in more Destiny lore, you can find me at Myelin Games on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Peace.